everybody. Thanks for coming. My name is Bhanu and I work for a company called Kutir Technologies. Today I am going to talk about how to build enterprise applications that look and feel like consumer applications. So before we get into the topic, a very brief introduction about us. We are a IT consulting company based out of California with offices in California and India. We've been working with the JQueryMobile product suite for the last year plus, and we built several enterprise applications. We are a partner for JQueryMobile, Motorola, Microsoft and Oracle, and we deliver on consulting projects. So we help both with delivering projects to customers as well as training. And there are some flyers out here and back there that talks about our company if you are interested. So I'm going to start by showing some screenshots of some consumer applications, and the whole purpose of this call, of this meeting, of this presentation is to talk about how to make a boring enterprise application. So when people talk about enterprise application, the first word that comes to mind is boring, because it just does what it is supposed to do. It's not fun like using an iOS app. I'm going to show you some techniques to make the enterprise apps look like a consumer app. The primary focus will be on using jQueryMobile. We'll briefly touch on JQUMobi and Sencha Touch, which are other tools that do the same thing. I'll show you some resources where you can get more information and leave some room for questions. So throughout the talk, I am going to be switching back and forth between the presentation, code and running some samples. So feel free to stop me at any time. And just so I can set my pace, how many of you are familiar with Row Elements version 2 or Roads? Okay, that's a pretty good number. Thank you. So these are screenshots of Gmail and another application primarily focused at consumers. So if you look, some of the things that make it intuitive and user friendly are the usage of icons. For example, for the inbox, for the sent mail. So just by looking at those, you know what you are looking at. The other kinds of things are very intuitive actions. So when you look at the plus button, you know that you are adding something. And when you look at these right arrows, it kind of intuitively tells you that when you click on it's something that is clickable, and when you click on it, it does something. Again, there are different kinds of arrows, each one meant to convey a different sense of activities that you can perform. So does not have to look just gray and blue. Your apps can look just like your rest of your company's website, or it can match your company's branding. So here we have two screenshots from Career Builder, one from Career Builder, other from Nike. So they are using different colors, different icons, different logos to brand the application. So just because it's an enterprise application doesn't mean that it has to look plain vanilla. you can and you should be able to brand it so that your customers intuitively know that it is your company's application that they are working on. So, I am going to show you some techniques to achieve what I just showed you through the usage of jQueryMobile. So, for those of you familiar with building web applications, I am sure you have come across jQuery. It is a great application library for building web applications. Unfortunately, it works great on the desktops, but not so much on the mobile devices. And so, jQueryMobile was built primarily for mobile devices, both the smartphones as well as tablet devices. It is built on top of jQuery, so you get all of the querying, all of the nice querying features of jQuery. But at the same time it adds a lot of nice user interface touches. It also takes advantage of the device features like swiping, tapping and holding and things of that nature. So, it is really meant for mobile devices. It supports HTML5 so that any application that you build, you do not have to port it to different platforms. So, any device that supports HTML5 runs your application without any change. So, as I said, it supports, jQueryMobile runs on tablets, smartphones, even Nook. So, essentially what I was saying before, it is HTML5 based, works and looks the same on different platforms. You can customize for your company's branding. So, it supports a whole slew of devices. So, one of the things that sets apart jQueryMobile from jQMobi and Sencha Touch and the other frameworks is the breadth of support for almost all of the devices in the industry, right from iOS and Android and BlackBerry to Windows mobile phones, WebOS, etc. The other nice thing that I like about jQueryMobile is it uses something called progressive enhancement. What it means is, for a device that is a very stripped down device that cannot run animations and things like that, without you having to change your code, it will run just the basic functional aspects of the code. Whereas, if you run the same application on a very high end device, not only does it support the functional aspects of your application, but also all of the fancier things like animations, transitions, AJAX calls, things like that. So, that is essentially what progressive enhancement is. So, support the basic functionality on the very basic devices, and then as the device gets better in terms of features, the framework automatically starts enabling those on the higher powered devices. So, the support for devices is categorized by jQueryMobile folks into A grade, B grade and C grade. So, at the A grade are the iOS, Android, BlackBerry devices as well as desktop browsers. For a B grade device like a BlackBerry 5, you do get your functional the application function, you just do not have the AJAX navigation, for example. And for a C grade device like a Windows mobile device or even an older version of BlackBerry like version 4, you just get plain vanilla application. You do not get any of the fancier features, but the important fact is the application still runs on those low powered devices. So, that is something that is very nice, because you do not have to worry about porting your code to these different sets of devices. You just write it once and you are done. So, just to give you an idea of the kinds of applications that have been built using this framework, there is the Stanford application, Walt Disney, OpenTable. So, as you can see, each of these applications, they look very different from each other. They don't look like your typical enterprise application. They convey the branding of the company that it is built for. You can have all sorts of icons that make the feature intuitive. You can put your own company branding like the Mickey Mouse. You can have different background colors. So anything that you can think of to make your application attractive and intuitive to the user, you can do that. So, there are some key components of jQueryMobile that lets you do what I just talked about. So, some of the components are pages and dialogues. So, I will talk in more detail about several of these. Toolbars, buttons, formatting content, forms, which is one of the more frequently used aspects of any framework, UI framework. Lists, again, that's frequently used. Additionally, there are helper utilities as well as tools to manage events. So, for example, if you are building a book reader and the user swipes on the right side, you want to be able to detect that. So, that is what event management does for you. So, let us take a look at some of the components. We do not have time to go through all of the components, but I will highlight some of them. So, let us start with a page and a dialog. A page, it is basically what you think of a page. It's what you see on the screen. It's the fundamental element. What jQuery allows you to do is to show a single page as is, or if you have multiple pages, it lets you treat all of those pages as a single page, so that when you transition from one page to the other page, it does not feel like you are browsing a website. It almost feels like you are flowing from one screen to the other. So, that is the kind of effect it brings you, and it does it automatically for you. So, all you have to do is link the second page from the first page and vice versa, and you can have a very smooth transition. I have an example, I will show that to you. So, to build a basic page, you need a header and a body. So, a header basically, okay. So, even before we talk about the header, the first thing we need to do is define this as an HTML5 application, and the way we do that is to set the doc type to HTML. So, anytime you set doc type HTML, it means we are talking about an HTML5 application. And then there are three essential things that we need to do to take advantage of jQueryMobile. One is to import the style sheet. So, here I am pointing to the content delivery network on the jQueryMobile side, but you can ship it local. You can download it and ship with your mobile application. The second thing you need is the core jQuery library itself, and I am using a minified version. The third thing you need is the actual jQuery library, the jQueryMobile library. Additionally, what I am doing is I am setting a property called a viewport, and I am setting it to say that scale to the width of the device. So, this way when you change from portrait to landscape or go from a smaller device to the bigger device, you do not have to hard code the dimensions of various things, the application automatically scales. So, that is the header, and if you look at the body, there is only two essential things that you would need to do. One is to create a div and assign an element called data role equal to page. We will talk about the data attributes in a second, but whenever you say data role equal to page, that means that is the container for the rest of your application to reside in. And within the page, really all you need is the content, and that is where you put your main application content. Header and footer are obviously optional, but that is it is helpful for navigation and informational purposes. So, coming to the data attributes, it is a new feature of HTML5. It basically lets you define the look and feel as well as the behavior of certain elements of any element that you want, but do it in a descriptive way rather than a programmatic way. So, it is just like setting a property. So, you do not really have to do anything. For example, when I say data role equal to page, I define all of the styling in the style sheet. So, I do not really have to do anything specific inside my HTML code for the styling or the behavior or anything like that. I do not even need to write JavaScript. So, for example, there is a data attribute called transition. So, when I say data transition equal to flip, when you click on the element that has that transition, it flips when you click on it. So, the point here is you do not have to write JavaScript code for it, you do not have to write any code for it. All you have to do is declare that it is a data transition flip and you are done. So, there are several transitions, fade, pop, flip. You must be familiar with this when you play with your smartphones and tablets. But the point here is if you use this framework, you get all of these built in. So, let us look at an example before we get to a dialogue. So, what I have here is a row elements 2 application or a roads application, and I am looking at the index.erb file. So, all I am doing, since this is a static application, I do not need any model or controller. I am just going to show everything in the view. The idea, so I generated a basic roads application, the same you can do the same with row elements 2, and then under app I am editing the file called index.erb. So, inside the file what I have done is I have stripped out whatever was auto generated and I wrote my own code. So, I defined something called data role equal to page and I gave it an ID of home. We will talk about why I gave the ID home in a second, but let us focus on data role equal to page. and then I defined that my page has a header and I gave it a title, and then I said there is something called data role equal to content, and inside the content I have two links. One is to contact us and one is to know more about us. And again, for when you click on or tap on contact us, I am saying show the other page, but flip do a transition do the transition through a flip. And when you tap on about us, I am saying the transition should be pop. And then I defined a footer, and that is it. So, here for the contact I have defined I have given a link to contact us and I have referenced it through the ID. So, if I go to the contact, so again I have defined one more page called contact us, and so for me to be able to reference this page I need to give it an ID, and so I gave it an ID of contact us, and this is exactly the ID that I referred to when I tap on the link from the home page. So, I did not have to include the second page within the same file. I could have done it in a separate file, but just to give you an idea of the point that I am trying to drive here though is, even though you have multiple pages, what jQueryMobile does is when you tap on a link, it does not actually replace the first page and load the second page, it just does a DOM replacement. So, it almost feels like you are loading within the same application. It does not feel like a web application where you are going to an external link and bringing, it does not feel like that. Same way I have defined a third page called about us, and then I am referencing that third page from within my first page, and I am going back, and inside the second page as well as the third page I have a link back to my home, and since I need a way to reference it, and the reference for the ID for the first page for the home page is home, that is how I am referencing it. Any questions before I run this example? So, I am going to run this on an iOS simulator. So, this is what I was talking about. So, I have my title, I have my body, I have my footer and two links, contact us and about us. And so, I said when I tap on contact us, flip and show the contact us page. So, even though the contact us is a different page, it does not feel like we are going to a different page. And if I click tap on about us, it pops up. Questions? Okay. So, a lot of the examples that we talk about, or most of the functionality that I am going to show you today are going to be enabled through the data dash attributes. So, we have seen data role. Now, let us talk about data rel. So, you can find all of these in the jQuery mobile documentation, and I am going to give you references to it. But here if you want to enable a dialog, all you have to do is say data-rel equal to dialog to any link, and when you tap on that link, it shows up as a dialog. So, one of the more common features of a web application or a mobile application is the ability for users to interact with your application through forms, and jQueryMobile has a lot of support for enhancing the look and feel as well as the behavior of forms, but compliant and conformant to the restrictions of a mobile device. So, what it does is it makes the checkboxes and radio buttons bigger, so that you can tap on those easily. When you click, when you have a select item, it pops up a box. I am sure you are familiar with it if you use an iOS device. I will show you examples of those, so that you can easily pick your choice. Then there is support for on and off switches, search boxes, sliders, that's again mobile device specific, and then you can actually group all of your radio buttons or checkboxes, so that it is very clear to the user that they belong to a they all belong to the same category. And then by default it makes the corners rounded, so that it looks good. By the way, speaking of rounded corners, the way jQueryMobile implements this is through CSS3 transitions. So, it does not actually use any images, it does it through CSS3 mechanism to do drop shadows and rounded corners. The reason for that is obviously speed. And then again to make your radio buttons or checkboxes belong to a group, all you have to do is say data role equal to control group, and then all of the items that you define within a control group become grouped. Let's talk about each of these through an example. So, again I created a basic roads application. I stripped out everything that was created by default in the index.erb file, and then I basically created these form elements that I just referred to. So, here I have a page. I chose not to use a header. So, inside my content I have something called field contain. So, data role field contain. So, anything that you define as field contain. So, what jQueryMobile does is, so here we have two elements that we are displaying on the page, the user's name and their age. So, because we defined these within field contain, what it does is it aligns the labels and it aligns the text boxes. We talked about control group. So, I am using checkboxes in this example, and as I mentioned before, when we have a control group, it groups all of the checkboxes or radio buttons within a certain group. And then here I have a slider. If I say input type equal to range, I get a slider. and this is an on off switch, and so the way you code for it is say data role equal to slider, and then give the options that the slider should show. So, in my case I am saying yes or no, and then here I have a a drop down selection. So here's the thing. So you don't you don't have to do anything special for drop downs. There is no data role or anything like that for drop downs. So drop downs are automatically enhanced by jQueryMobile. So if you do not want this, this is one of those special cases where if you do not want it, you turn it off. So let's run this and let's switch back and forth between the code and the example. So I am not running this on an Android emulator because it takes a while to run on it. And this time let me make this run on the iPad instead of an iPhone, just so that we can see it more clearly. Okay. So here we have the user's name and age, and like I said, because we defined the name and age within field contain, the labels, the name and the age, as well as the text boxes where I enter my input, they are aligned. I didn't have to do anything for that. And then if you look at the check boxes, so I said for check boxes, I want them within a control group. So I gave it a data role control group, and so what it does is, as you can see, all the three selections, they are grouped together. There is no vertical space between the elements, and they are squished together. Visually they look like they belong to a group. And the next one is a slider. So for a slider, all I had to do was say input type equal to range and give the maximum value and minimum value. So if I drag this slider, it goes up to 31 because that is the maximum value I defined. And then next I have an on and off switch, and again to enable that, all I have to say is data role equal to slider and give the options. Finally, I have a drop down, and so this is what I meant by a pop up appearing when you tap on the drop down list. So this is the default iPad behavior. If I ran the same thing on an iPhone, the behavior would be slightly different. So this type of a pop up comes up. The point is, you do not have to do any of these, it is already done for you. And if you ran the same example on an Android emulator, it would behave exactly like a drop down would behave on an Android device. And so as I said earlier, just to reiterate, for a drop down you do not have to do anything different. Just code it like you are coding any regular drop down in HTML, and jQueryMobile will enhance it for you automatically. If you do not want these enhancements, set data role equal to none. This is one of the few where you have to turn off enhancements if you do not want them. And then I have my submit and cancel buttons. Those are standard submit buttons. we'll talk about UI block A and UI block B in a minute. The other commonly used user interface element is a list, and to get the enhanced list elements, all you have to do again is set data dash role equal to list view wherever you have an ordered list or an unordered list. There's different kinds of lists. I don't want to bore you by talking through all of these, but basically you can have simple lists, list with a right arrow at the end, which indicates that it's a that it has a link, it's clickable. Then I'm sure you've seen split button lists where there is a list and there is a vertical divider, and you can perform two different actions depending on which section, which segment of the list element you click on. Oh, here's an interesting feature. So, if you have a very long list, you can filter or search through that list to narrow your selection, and to enable this, all you have to say is data filter equal to true on the OL or UL tag. Again, I'll show you examples on all of these. Count bubbles for your inbox or your voice messaging system, you've seen count bubbles, how many new emails you have, how many in this folder, how many in that folder. So, that's where count bubbles are used typically, and all you have to do to get that feature is to set ULLI count, the attribute ULLI count for a list element. To jazz up your lists, so lists do not have to be boring. To jazz them up, you can place thumbnails or icons. So, let us quickly run through the list example. And let me also open up the code so that we can look at it simultaneously. Again, same thing, I have a basic roads app or row elements 2 app. So, let us walk through this quickly in the interest of time. So, this is my basic list view, and so this is how it looks like. I set data insert equal to true. What it does is it squishes the list away from the edges a little bit, and it makes them all grouped together so that it looks like they belong together. So, in the mobile context, whenever you see a right arrow in a list, it means it's a link. To do that, all I have to do is give a space href to the list element, and automatically I get these arrows. And then if I have a list, but at the same time I want to do a different action. So, if I click on for example, if I click on the name of the book, I want to see the details of it, but if I click on this blue icon, if I want to buy that book, so all you have to do is give two links to within a list element. And so, when you specify those two links, automatically it puts a jQuery, the framework puts a vertical divider and gives you two elements. So, click on the name, it tells me who the author is and more details about it, whereas if I click on the blue icon, I have coded it to give me the price of it. And then I have also set data filter equal to true for this list. So, I can, assuming this were a long list, I can quickly narrow it down and then it searches for you. So, I did not have to do anything. So, it comes for free. Oh, one cool thing is you do not have to the search term does not have to be at the beginning or the end. So, for example, if I search on the letter C, it narrowed the list from 4 to 3, and then if I do give one more letter, it narrowed it down to time machine. So, it is a very powerful search feature. So, and then we saw this, and so how to do count bubbles. All you have to do is inside your list element, you define one more element with a class of ULLI count, and then the actual count. So, if you hooked it up to a model, the count would come from your model. I have hard coded it here, but essentially this is what it would look like. I know it is too small. So, let me so this is the count. The other aspect of the framework is being able to theme. So, you can set your own companies or organizations color schemes, your logos, your icons, and then for each theme you can also specify what jQueryMobile calls as swatches. So, not only can you theme, but inside the theme you can define up to 26 colors. So, you can say my primary color is blue because I am from Motorola, and my secondary color is black, and then my tertiary color is something else, and so on. So, you can name these swatches A through Z. There is a very nice website called Theme Roller. So, what it does is instead of me talking about it, why do not we just look at it. So, instead of you hand coding every single element of your application to conform to your needs, the theme roller, what it does is it lets you visually set your font family, what the corner radius should be, what the different colors for each of the swatches should be, and things like that. So, there are two nice things about it. One is you can start with the theme roller generated style sheet. So, at the end of the day, when you do all your modifications, you can export the output of this as a style sheet, and then you can place that style sheet in your application folder, and then your application becomes styled according to this theme. And then further down the road, if you made any changes to it and you now want to import it into theme roller because you want to make large scale changes, you can import your style sheet, make large scale changes through this, again export it back to your application. So, this is a pretty good tool, especially if you are working with a designing company where you are a development company, but you are working with a third party designer. So, this is a good interface between the two teams. As I mentioned earlier, with jQueryMobile you can get access to the events that take place, for example, swipe or tap. In the interest of time, let me quickly go through the other tools. Roads and row elements support jQueryMobile, JQUMobi, and Sencha Touch. So, you have a choice of using any of these frameworks that you would like for your visual needs. JQUMobi one of the biggest selling points of this is its speed. It's blazingly fast, and the library is very small. The downsides, if you want to call it, is it runs only on Android, iOS and BlackBerry, no Windows Mobile. It does not support all of the features like, for example, carousel or iScrolls and things like that the jQueryMobile framework supports. So, your choice in the elements, visual elements is kind of limited. There is also no support for theme roller. So, if you want to work with a designer, you kind of have to exchange the style sheets between the two of you, and you have to hand code the various elements of the style sheets. And it is MIT license, so there is a fair bit of flexibility in the usage. Sencha Touch. This is a commercial software. This is also based on HTML5. Its selling point is that it uses an MVC architecture just for the JavaScript aspect of your application. So, if you are using this with roads or row elements, do not confuse with the MVC that roads itself supports, but this is another MVC just for your JavaScript. The one thing that I like about Sencha Touch is the UIs that it produces, they look really elegant. So, this might be a good option for some of the enterprise applications. The kind of downside is it is slow, it is not as fast as jQueryMobile and definitely not as fast as jQMobi, but it is still pretty good. It works on iOS, Android and BlackBerry, again no support for Windows Mobile, and you can either purchase commercial licenses or release it as GPL license version 3. The good thing, one of the plus points for this is there are tons of plugins available. So, almost any visual metaphor that you can think of, it already exists. So, here are the resources in case you are interested in learning more about any of these products. If you are going to work on jQueryMobile, I definitely would advise you to take a look at the theme roller and play with it. It is going to save you a lot of time. Okay, thank you very much.